This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Alan Hansen, of course, once said, "You don't win anything with kids." Well, perhaps an FA Cup fourth round replay as Liverpool saw off Shrewsbury Town 1-0 at Anfield. Welcome to the Blood Red podcast here from the Liverpool Echo. I'm Guy Clarke, and alongside me, three men who watched the action, and we're going to pick the bones out of it. Alongside me, Matt Addison. Matt, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you. You said about 5 minutes ago you didn't plan that. So that was a very professional introduction.
Well, thanks very much. Theo Squires. Theo, watching on at Anfield. And Theo, your thoughts on the game so far we'll get to in depth, but just sort of broad overview. They did all right, the kids, didn't they?
Yeah, I'd say highlight of the season so far, without going too over the top. It's a great feel-good factor.
Yeah, that is a big statement. And Dan Kay, Dan, a very youthful and junior side. We were talking about it just before turning the cameras on, but they certainly did show up as a true Liverpool side.
This is, and I think it shows that the culture of excellence and improvement that we've all been exulting about at first team level really does run through every aspect of the club, and I'd absolutely endorse what Theo said there. I think it's for me slightly older than some of my colleagues here, who's someone who's got still a great affection for the FA Cup. I couldn't be happy that whatever happens, I think, between now and May, the FA Cup has now been responsible for two of the most kind of treasured memories of Liverpool season.
Yeah, how big is that this season, you look at it, Liverpool going through the Premier League campaign unbeaten, winning all bar one game to this point, and yet two of the standout moments, both involving Curtis Jones against Everton in the third round, and then becoming the youngest ever Liverpool captain.
Well, and an extra strand of enjoyment of that for everybody, certainly locally, is the fact that he's a Scouser.
Yep.
From the South End. Couldn't sound more like he's from the South End, rather. But you look through the young lads who performed so admirably last night. Neco Williams, who was arguably man of the match, real powerhouse performance at right back, could have had a hat-trick or more.
You've been reading Connor's piece.
Well, yes, I think he's tapped into what all of us were thinking. The likes of Harvey Elliott, still only 16, who every time he takes the pitch just seems to look more and more like he's just got it at this level. The level of improvement he's still got ahead of him is frightening, really. But some of the lesser heralded likes of Leighton Clarkson, Adam Lewis at left back, and I think particularly Pedro Chirivella, who was the old man of the team at 22. But put in a real mature performance of graft and hard work. And I think I wasn't actually there myself last night. I was covering it in the office here, picking up bits and bobs that we could see from the internet and here, and obviously reports from those getting first-hand evidence. And apparently at the final whistle, his kind of reaction really kind of taps into the fact that he amongst with the likes of Curtis and others really took responsibility, shared that kind of burden through the 90 minutes, and were desperate to get it over the line, particularly obviously once we got our noses in front. And once we did, it was real euphoria on the pitch and in the stands, and I think for every Liverpoolian.
Yeah, all but a dozen perhaps appearances for Liverpool for Pedro Chirivella, Theo, but he was the man in the midfield really that needed to be there to sort of put the battle into Shrewsbury, because they came with a fairly experienced side, certainly EFL experience amongst their ranks, and didn't really want to give Liverpool the time to get their foot on the ball and really dictate and control the game, albeit that's how it played out.
It was a strange one with Shrewsbury's game plan, because it was basically just kick Liverpool and hope that they shy away, they get timid, and then just let Shrewsbury have the ball. It'll be an easy game for them. But Liverpool never did that, and Chirivella was probably one of the leading men there, because he was the number 6. It's such an important role in this Liverpool system. And as we've seen, it's the same if it's the first team, it's the same if it's 23s, 20s, whatever, that they make it all tick. They get the ball, they pass it around. I think there are a couple of shaky moments in this team, but you'd expect that with young players. Kiana Hova had a couple of dodgy moments, but then Chirivella's straight there back, cleaning up after him. And you can tell that he's 22, he's been learning off Jordan Henderson, James Milner, been training with these players. And it's great to see that he can take that responsibility. And I know he's said in the past that he knows his future's not at Liverpool. He's got to that stage now. He needs to move on for the sake of his career. He probably would have already moved on if it wasn't for that replay. But if he was 2 years younger, you'd say he's got a real chance of making it in this Liverpool team, because he just comes in and he's looked so comfortable whenever he's played this season. And when he's been a bit of a figure of fun, hasn't he? When he wasn't eligible to play against MK Dons, Liverpool almost got kicked out of the Carabao Cup as a result. And now it's like, hang on, he's actually a pretty decent player for someone who hadn't played for 3-4 years for the first team. He's just gone out on loans dodgy places. Fair play to him if he can get a move off the back of it. But then if he can keep this up, when you've had rumours of Klopp wanting to give him a new contract, could he potentially come in as a late squad player? We've seen it before with other players as they look to move on.
It just shows how late players can develop, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's almost slightly unfortunate in a sense that he's playing at a time when Liverpool are so good. I think in most squads, probably in my lifetime, he'd be a squad player at least. You know, he'd be getting 15, 20 games each season in most
like Kevin
of my...
Stewart a few years ago.
Yeah, well, yeah, when you think of some
Jay
of the
Spearing
names...
a little bit further back.
Yeah, he's just as good as those players, and I think you can really sort of tell that he's trained with the team so often, and as with all the players, to be fair, they just slotted in straight away, and just it looked like a Liverpool team again.
Was one of the key things as well in terms of the performance for Liverpool, dominated the statistics in every sort of aspect of the game in that respect. Just it was at Anfield, and I know we spoke after the away game, the initial tie, that everything was perhaps built against Liverpool in that respect. At home with a crowd that certainly wanted to see the youngsters go well, it was all for them. But sort of seeing that Liverpool DNA that seeps right through the club, that it doesn't matter which names and numbers are on the backs of the shirts, the players in the certain roles are fulfilling what's asked of them.
Who are you asking this one to?
Anyone. It's an open question to anyone who wants to take it on.
I think, what you say is correct, and it ties into the fact that there's a consistency and a continuity of approach, of mentality, of process that filters down really through every strand in the club. And that doesn't necessarily just tie it to pattern of play and the technical aspects of football. I think it very much ties into mentality, because this, by and large, this was largely the team that played at Aston Villa, played really well for the first 10, 15, 20 minutes of that game, from what I can remember. If they could have got their noses in front that day, it could have been an altogether different outcome. However, they were 4-0 down at half-time and lost 5-0. And I think in the build-up to this replay, once we knew that there were not going to be any senior players involved, there was a fear that, while nobody thought they would let, and I'm not saying they let themselves down at Villa, there was a fear that kind of result was maybe slightly obscured by the fact that most of the attention at the time was on the World Club Cup. And obviously the following day Liverpool had the semi-final against Monterrey. Whereas this, a game at Anfield in front of a full house, if they had suffered a real kind of heavy defeat, you would have kind of feared, what kind of impact that might have had on them. And as the lads have said, I think as John Aldridge pointed out in his column on Monday, you would always expect Shrewsbury to come and certainly try to be physical and maybe try to bully Liverpool a little bit. And that's certainly what they did early on. From the way I was kind of seeing and following the game here, you kind of thought before half time, these lads are in the game here, and I think they've got a decent chance of getting a result. But the start of the second half, clearly Shrewsbury had a rocket from the manager and came out a lot more kind of front foot, actually trying to have a go at Liverpool, and of course scored a goal, which thankfully from our point of view was ruled out from VAR. But I think it shows that the Liverpool, the young Liverpool, were able to absorb that kind of initial second half change of impetus from the visitors, handle it, absorb it, and find a way to kind of turn the game back in their favour, which they did. And when the goal came, I think it was on the back of 15 minutes or so of with Liverpool getting back on top. And I don't think anyone could really suggest that Liverpool's young players don't deserve it. And, against the team that, all right, 2 divisions below, but of senior experienced pros. And I think I'm right in saying that was pretty much Shrewsbury's full-strength side they put out there.
Full internationals on that team.
Yeah, it is an extraordinary result. In this, just when you think this season can't surprise you anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the mentality, the togetherness of the players, and I think it really showed that they've played together before, first of all. But the other big thing for me in terms of that filtering down was James Milner was there. He was in the dressing room. He was on the bench.
It's fantastic, that.
It's just a fantastic gesture, and I'm not sure why I'm surprised, because we all know James Milner, and we know how much of a professional and a pro that he is. But I just thought that was a nice symbolic moment of what was a fantastic night for the whole club, really.
I think it's nice, the growth for the youngsters as well, because it's very easy in this season to look at Liverpool's first team and see them go from strength to strength, winning every game, going to win the Premier League. They could win the treble now because they're still in the Cup. But it's been the same for the youngsters too, because you think they've been in the Football League trophy at the start of the season, and they didn't go all their own way. I think they lost 2 games to Accrington. That was a 5-2, and they lost to Oldham 3-2. They lost to Fleetwood on penalties. And you think, well, that's a tough experience, but it's senior experience of sorts. Then they go to the Aston Villa game, and it's one of the great English stadiums, isn't it? And they go and get thrashed 5-0. But you can still see there's improvement there. And now, a couple months later, they've gone and knocked out a team who are proper League One team, proper Football League team. It just shows how much difference that experience gets and how quickly these young players can develop. Like, Liverpool would not have lost 5-0 against Aston Villa if they'd had Curtis Jones out there. That's just what happens. If you've got these players that have had the senior experience, it just needs a handful of appearances, because the faith and the self-belief that gives you. Like, say Liam Miller last night, for example, he's gone and done a year on loan at Kilmarnock. He knows he might not make it at Liverpool, but he's got enough now to make it in the game somewhere. And these players, by making these appearances, they go, yeah, now I'm going to make it somewhere. And it's just like Neil Critchley said, this isn't a defining game in your careers. This is the first step. See where you're going to go now.
Yeah, really interesting from Neil Critchley. But in terms of Liverpool and how they've gone this season, mentioning the games actually the youngsters have played, John Coleman was on the Allez Le Rouge podcast last week, Peter Hooton, and he, having obviously managed against the young side in the Football League trophy this season, felt confident that Shrewsbury were going to win. But it shows that resilience that this squad has to go out and, as you say, Theo, say that this game isn't the game that defines us, that we see pieces written on websites in 5 years' time saying what happened to those players who played Shrewsbury when they lost and were dumped out the FA Cup. No, these youngsters now have actually, in many ways, perhaps, Matt, given themselves a springboard to, if it's not going to be at Liverpool, at least show that they can make it in the pro game somewhere.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, it was a big window of opportunities, as we talked about on the Academy show. That was the key word from that one, was, you know, how much of a big chance this was. And individually and collectively, I think they all took that opportunity. You think of someone like Quiveen Kelleher, for example. His last 2 senior appearances, he's conceded 5 in each of those against Arsenal, obviously the most recent, and Aston Villa as well. And, you know, individually, I think that was the best that I've seen him play. That was by far and away the best I've seen Sepp Vandenberg play. You know, you go through the team, and Adam Lewis as well. He's obviously been massively unfortunate with injuries and stuff over the last few seasons, but that would have been a huge boost to his confidence. And look, most of those players, you know, Championship, League One sides would have been aware of, but it's just a sort of confirmation if they're looking for loan deals in future. If, you know, these players leave Liverpool at some point, people are going to look back and say, well, I remember them playing against Shrewsbury, and I remember what they did. And, you know, it's just it's another big step for all of their careers. And I do think 1 or 2 of them will go on and play for Liverpool for a long time. But we know that the reality is the majority will have to go and find other places, and that's a big step towards that.
Yeah, you say some will go on and play for Liverpool for a long time. I think the main one we looked at and spoke about him right at the top was Curtis Jones, 19 years and 6 days old, less than a week into his 20th year on this planet. He's captaining Liverpool. Theo, do you remember what you were doing at 19 years and 6 days old? Because I certainly don't remember what I was doing.
That's probably something I can't say on a podcast at university. It's amazing, isn't it? Like Curtis Jones, we've always seen him these last few years. I think, yeah, he's a decent player, but he's probably going to be another one of those midfielders that makes a few appearances and then has to go elsewhere. And then this year it's like, well, where's this player come from? He's just sensational. It doesn't matter what level he's playing at. He completely dominates it, and he looks so confident, and he knows how good he is. And that's the scary thing, because he is just going to get better. Like some of the highlights, I know they've made it onto social media, even though the game wasn't televised. He's done this little Rabona cross. It's just, you shouldn't have the cheek to do that, but he does it perfectly. All this side needed was a proper striker to get on the end of it, and it's one of the goals of the season. He's got his little turn where he's nutmegged the defender in the corner, and he probably beats him as well if he doesn't get the hand in the face. He had one where he's flicked the ball over his defender and then just killed it dead, looked up. He's just so confident, and I don't think there was any doubts that he would be a worthy captain for this team. If it hadn't been for the fact that he was in Qatar, he'd probably captained him at Villa Park as well. And he is just going to get better. There's a reason why Jurgen Klopp didn't loan him out last month, and it is because they know he is ready for this team. And you look at the Liverpool midfield now, yes, it's cluttered. Yes, there are a lot of options there, a lot of senior options there, which means the game time will be a little bit limited at times. He probably isn't on the bench when everyone's fit and available, but the Liverpool midfield are slowly edging towards the 30s. You've got like Henderson and Wijnaldum are going to near their 30th birthday soon. Milner and Lallana obviously past that now. Lallana's probably going in the summer. He is getting to this, showing this ability at the right time, learning off them, where there is going to be a space to open up when he gets to the peak of his powers.
Yeah, and looking at the game from last night, you don't want to shower a player so young in too high praise, Dan, but watching the way he played off the left, played the free role, came in behind the striker. Basically, the game ran through him, and You said before, obviously being a local lad, that means so much to the Liverpool fan base locally to seeing him do so well. We've seen the likes of Jay Spearing come through, Cameron Brannigan. They're always dubbed the next Steven Gerrard because they play central midfield. Curtis Jones doesn't seem to have any of that baggage before he's played. He's being able to go out there and do his own thing. Yeah,
and I mean, he looks like the kind of lad that doesn't suffer with self-confidence too much. But it's as you get into the adult game, it's balancing that out with the reality that you've got to kind of learn your stripes, work your way up, gain that experience. And I think the fact that he's already had, a few run-outs for the first team from the substitutes bench this season has helped him. I have got it recorded. I haven't watched the full 90 minutes back yet, but from bits and pieces I've read from the reports as well as the the exciting pieces of skill with end product from quite a bit of it that Theo's mentioned there. There was also a fair amount of digging in and cajoling and encouraging and organising his teammates, which I think is one of the. There was some debate before the game. We didn't know until the teams were named whether it would be him or Chirivella who would actually be wearing the captain's armband. I think Neil Critchley had said before it was basically going to be a toss of the coin job. But I think whether that was just from he said to the media and he was always going to give it to Curtis, we don't know that. But I think it's quite telling that it maybe wasn't the flash. I think obviously his stunning match-winning goal in the derby against Everton in the third round will always gain more headlines in terms of a performance than what he did last night. But in many ways, maybe last night was just as valuable in its own way because, particularly, when I think the goal, when was the goal? About 65, 70 minutes.
Something like that.
Yeah, in actual fact, quite similar time to when it was in the third round tie as well. And I mean, I was at Anfield for the third round tie against Everton, and once the goal went in, there was very much a case of, God, they've got to hang on now. It would be devastating if, having got their noses in front, having centred this miracle in front of them, if they weren't able to see it out, it would have been really sad for them. And it just felt like everybody dug in, led by the likes of Curtis with the armband. And I think it says a lot about the team that there was a lot of captain-type performances from the other players that weren't wearing the armband, the likes of Chirivella, the likes of Neco Williams, Kevin Gallagher making that big, strong claim at the end. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people have identified with the first team this season. All right, Jordan Henderson might be the captain, but there's leaders all over that pitch. And the fact that we're seeing that same kind of parallel at youth team level, I think is enormously encouraging for the club's future.
I think it's done them the world of good that they've got Trent there to look up to. Yeah. Like for so long we've been saying, when's the next Gerrard coming through? Yep. And they've had those nearly.
And they've seen his pathway, haven't they?
But Trent's come in and done it, and he's like the next Steven Gerrard, but from right back. So he's taken that pressure off them and he's made it a reality. And you're not asking for the next Trent Alexander-Arnold because you've still got him and you know he's going to get so much better. But even then, they've practically found it in Neco Williams. He's looking that good as well. He's knowing that they can do it and that Klopp will give them the opportunities and that the talent is there in this age group. It's brilliant for all the youngsters and they're getting the rewards from it.
Yes, certainly with Curtis Jones, I know from being in and around the academy, there's never been any doubt over his ability. But over the last sort of 12, 18 months, there's been a real push from Neil Critchley and from Barry Lutus and Alex Inglethorpe as well to put more and more responsibility on him and say, look, we know you're a good footballer, but we need you to be doing the other things around that. So I'd imagine the plan was always to give him that captain's armband as a kind of reward, really. I mean, I remember seeing him when Steven Gerrard was the coach of the under-18s, and you could tell straight away there was a player there, but maybe he was selfish is maybe the wrong word, but he wasn't doing it for the team, and he was more of an individual player. But certainly over the last 12 to 18 months, I think he's just come on leaps and bounds as a footballer, but as a person as well. And to be captain in Liverpool at that age is just a ridiculous achievement, but also a massive reward for what he's done.
The mental strength of the side as well, I suppose, was questioned, Theo. For a young side up against an experienced side, you did feel that first goal was so crucial. And when it looked as though Shrewsbury had scored, obviously the goal disallowed for offside, Liverpool then do come back into the game. That felt like a real crucial moment in the match.
Well, Sam Ricketts said it was the game-changing moment because obviously he's had a real go at his side at half-time and Shrewsbury did look a lot better after the break, but the game still ends without them having a shot on target. If they get that goal, they probably do go through just because it's so much harder for Liverpool to then get back in it when, if Shrewsbury are ahead, they're just going to sit back, defend. They don't need to do any more, especially against a young, experienced side who don't really have the game management. So for Liverpool to hold their own and look so impressive. We already know they dominated possession. I think they only committed like one foul, and that was Neco Williams following up on his block shot, wanting the ball back, whereas Shrewsbury were just kicking them left, right and centre. So they did the business right from start to finish. And yes, it might have been a bit fortuitous, whether we say it was correct decision for offside or whatever, but these things happen right the way through football. It doesn't matter whether it was just kids. Like, we've seen Liverpool benefit from it time and time again. That's why you got Liverpool on social media all this season. So it's just one of those things, and they can be proud of their performance.
They certainly can. And talking about how dominant the first team have been, Dan, looking at the statistics, it's now 40 games unbeaten in all competitions at Anfield for Liverpool. 3 of those games, though, you think, were the kids against Arsenal, of course, Everton, and now Shrewsbury. And within that, Liverpool haven't conceded any of the last 7 at home. 2 of those games, Everton and Shrewsbury, in which the kids featured.
I think, there's an old cliche, isn't there? Success breeds success, and winning can become a habit. But ultimately, I think it ties into the values, the principles that Jurgen Klopp has instilled throughout the club. And I think, and obviously there was an awful lot said, and in some quarters an awful lot of rubbish talked about the decision that was made not to use any senior players, not for Klopp to be there itself. And it's a multi-layered issue, and there's probably about 10 podcasts all in its own talking about the things that came up for that. But there is a kind of irony to some degree, and I've seen this raised in a couple of quarters since the match last night, that in many ways his absence last night almost made his presence that much stronger, because everything that we saw on the pitch and in the stands, to be fair, where from everything I've heard from mates who were there, the crowd were really with the players, stayed with them, during the difficult spells in the game, and that all comes into what Klopp has instilled into the club, into the players, into the supporters, and it's now flowing through every strand, every aspect of the club. And I've been a devout Liverpool supporter 35 years and seen some good times when I was a kid, but I can't ever remember everything and everyone feeling so together, and it just does feel like an absolutely irresistible, unstoppable force at the moment.
Does it show how much control Klopp has over the club, Theo, that the fact that he can step away from this game? And I know a lot of people will talk about the domestic cups under Klopp shortly, but I know a lot of people say Klopp doesn't care about the domestic cups. I am 100% sure he wanted his team to progress in this tournament, and he felt the best way of doing that, because his first team were on a winter break, was not him being in charge, but Neil Critchley, who I feel has perhaps been overlooked somewhat, deserves real credit for the way in which he guided Liverpool through to the 5th round.
Oh, 100%, because it's one of those where if Jurgen Klopp's in the dugout, as he said himself, he's only had, 2 days training with these players. Yes, he knows a couple of them. They've been training with his first team. But it's better having the whole familiarity there for them, because that's how you're going to get the best out of these players. And then you might have had critics saying, well, you could at least watch it. He could be in the director's box or something. But then if you've got him in the stadium somewhere, the cameras aren't on Neil Critchley. They're not on the players. They're
it's a sideshow then.
It's on Klopp, isn't it? How is he reacting to this? How much of a say is he having on this? And Critchley was asked what messages he had from...
He was asked 3 times in the press conference.
They kept going and going.
Yeah.
And they kept asking, what did he say pre-match? What did he say half-time? What did he say full-time? So, I've not checked my phone yet. It's just a couple of text messages. He's not given a team talk via text message. This is Neil Critchley, who's managed to get this victory there. And you could see how much it meant to him at full-time. He said himself, I don't know if I'll get this opportunity again. So he's gone right up to the Kop, really soaking it in, and then done the little lap of honour. It was a great sight to see. And Klopp, he's got that faith in the staff and the academy. That's why the success is all the way across the board. He knows they can go and do this job and do it without him, and it will be for the benefit of the club. Like he's in the Youth Cup. They won that last year. He didn't need to intervene there. It was just sit back, enjoy what the young players are doing, and it's going to keep on happening.
Yeah, Neil Critchley, Matt, has achieved something Jurgen Klopp's never done, reached the 5th round of the FA Cup.
Yeah, I mean, what a night for him. I mean, I think he admitted himself at the end, that might well be the last time he gets that opportunity, and certainly he took it. And yes, I mean, for someone who's spoken to him quite a few times over the last couple of seasons, he's an excellent coach. He's a lovely person as well. Like you can get along with him and have an honest chat. And I think with the players, he's exactly the same. I think they all trust him. He trusts them. Jurgen Klopp trusts him to do the job, as Theo said. And there's almost just that continuity whereby it almost didn't matter who was was in the dugout for the game in terms of, the game plan was always going to be the same. The system is the same. The way that the team sets up is always the same. And, look, they won, didn't they? I mean, you can't really do much more than that to keep a clean sheet. Score the goal. Okay, it was an own goal, but, still Liverpool created far more chances, certainly deserved the win. And, yeah, I'm absolutely delighted for all of them.
And we wouldn't expect the kids to rock up in the bus down at Stamford Bridge in the 5th round, Dan, but I suppose it has proven that the youngsters, certainly a number of them that we've already singled out on this podcast, are capable of supplementing Jurgen Klopp's squad. We've spoken about how vast Manchester City's squad and how expensive that's been to assemble. If Liverpool can add to their squad from within, whether it be before the summer or even during the summer, promote a few of these players, it's only going to stand Liverpool in good stead.
Absolutely. I mean, I would hope and expect that the team we see at Chelsea in the 5th round would be similar to the team that we saw in the 3rd round against Everton. The likes of Chirivella, Jones, Neco Williams, possibly Narucci, but also the likes of Keita, Shaqiri, Origi, some of the fringe senior players, the same team that largely we've seen for the domestic cups. Adrian back in goal, of course. But I think one of the most heartening aspects of this kind of wild ride that the academy players have been on now, that they've all seen that these aren't just empty words. Oh yeah, we'll get you a game in the League Cup or the FA Cup if things come, if the opportunity arises. The managers, the manager and the club have shown such faith in these players, and that faith has been repaid because clearly they've all bought into this kind of all for one for all mentality that the first team players have, and that's why I think, as Matt said before, I think it's an immutable law of academy football that only a small proportion of those who get to under 21, under 23 level will actually go on and have long careers at the main clubs that they are. But I think there's every chance that all of them will hopefully go on to have good careers in the game. But we very much hope that a couple of them will find a pathway through to the first team. And obviously that works to the advantage of the club. Liverpool will always be looking to buy players at the top end of the market. Yep. But if we're in a position where we've got young kids who are coming through that can show that they can operate at this level, and obviously the prime example of that is Ballon d'Or nominee Trent Alexander-Arnold, who only a few years ago was playing academy football at Melwood as well. It shows, it just says to every one of these young players, if you put the graft in, work hard and get the little bit of luck that we all need in life, it's all there for them.
Said we'd speak about the domestic cups, Theo. 22 points clear in the league. The Champions League resumes later this month. How important now does the FA Cup become? We assume Liverpool should see out their league advantage. You'd have to obviously be very, very sceptical to think they wouldn't. The man on the end, Dan Kay, is one of those. Well, not thinking they won't, but not wanting to count his chickens. But in terms of the domestic cups, there's now perhaps a possibility Liverpool could really go for a treble.
Depends on the progress in the competition, because we know it's Chelsea away in the 5th round, and whilst Jurgen Klopp will be delighted for the young players, we're probably going to say that's a game you didn't want. Let's be honest, you don't want to go to Chelsea, you don't want to go and play them midweek, and with the season they're having, they're going to be up for the cup because it's a chance for Frank Lampard to get silverware for them and have a successful first season. Liverpool will prioritise the Premier League, but this game could be it's the first week of March, second week of March. The league could be a win away by then, 2 wins away by then. So once that's done and dusted, the priority is the Champions League. So you'd imagine Jurgen Klopp will go full strength for the Champions League, and that's quite right. You expect that with Atletico Madrid. But if Dan's right, and it's what you'd expect to happen, that it will be like the team that played Everton. They can get the job done against Chelsea, and then you're in the quarterfinals, you're in the semi-finals. Well, you should be able to balance it, really, just because your league games are done. You can rotate across the board and just choose your best 11 from the fitness levels to get the job done. And while it's probably too early to say go and win the treble or go and be invincible or whatever, Liverpool will get to that stage when they lift the Premier League title that they do have to reassess, well, what do we do now for the next 2 months of the season? Do you just keep your full-strength team in the league games and go for being invincible, or do you prioritise the cup competitions? The fact that they've shown so much strength so far, why can't they do it all?
Yeah, Dan, I see you looking perhaps somewhat uneasy thinking of all this success that might come Liverpool's way. But I have to say, even if they wrap up the league title with, if it's 6, if it's 7 games to spare, I don't think this squad know anything other than to win football matches.
No, and one of my favourite Liverpool banners is from the 2001 FA Cup final where we beat Arsenal in Cardiff. I think it might have been a quote.
Remember that one?
Might have been a quote from Gladiator, and it says, I think it's something like, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then becomes not an art but a habit." And I think they've got into this rhythm and routine of winning and winning and winning, and it's addictive. And I think a few of them have actually even pretty much used that expression. Once you have a taste of it, you want more and more. I wasn't actually you said I was looking kind of a little apprehensive about it. I'm never going to be one of those that bangs the drum and says, "We've won the league now, give us the trophy." But I think you'd look a fool if you didn't say we're our absolute red-hot favourites. And I think myself and excuse me, a few others are kind of gradually realising that. I think we were all expecting kind of like one big cathartic Aguero moment when it was sealed. And in reality, it's just kind of like a slow series of realisations week after week, almost twice a weekend sometimes if City get beat as well, that slowly but surely it is going to happen. But even from a supportive point of view, and don't get me wrong, if you said in August you'd get one trophy and it's the league championship, I would be doing cartwheels up and down this office. But having seen how good we are, having seen how hungry we are, I would be very disappointed if to me it's inconceivable that the players aren't feeling the same way, and they want to wring every last little bit of success out of this season they can, because you don't know when seasons like this will happen again.
Open question then for each of you to sort of take us out on this episode of Blood Red, with no team selector for any game to look ahead to because they're all out sunning themselves or whatever they're doing on their mid-season break. But you spoke there, Dan, about that cathartic moment that Liverpool have. How fulfilling, therefore, is it that not only are Liverpool looking as though they're making this ascent towards the Premier League title, but they're doing it with a team that aren't just going to do it on the last day. They are actually purely dominating. They've obviously beaten every league opponent, dominating at the moment every competition they sort of go into.
Yeah, I mean, look, in an ideal world, you'd win it on the last day of the season, 90 plus 6. Mohamed Salah pops up with a last-minute winner, and Liverpool win it on the last day. And look, that would be brilliant. But after 30 years, I think most Liverpool fans, well, every single Liverpool fan just wants to win the league. Yeah. It doesn't particularly matter, how it happens or whatever. I think Liverpool, when it is confirmed, Liverpool is just going to go crazy, and rightly so.
But Liverpool have had so many near misses. We expect it to be harder than this. It shouldn't be this easy to win a Premier League when you're against Manchester City, which should be one of the greatest teams that English football's ever seen. And we've had so many years of admiring Pep Guardiola's Manchester City team. Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool have gone under the radar a bit, and this is where they're taking the cloak off. It's like, won the Champions League now, we've arrived. It's like, wow, this is the best team that England has seen. And you can't really appreciate it whilst they're there, because we're Liverpool fans. You've all grown up on the legends. You know all the names. You can go right the way back to Bill Shankly's time, the 60s, 70s, all the way through. And it just seems surreal saying, well, Jordan Henderson's one of them, James Milner's one of them. You can go through the whole team, can't you? But this is the reality now. And it's one of those where, say, 10 years' time, you look back, you'll realise how good this Liverpool team is. And yeah, they might not have had that last day moment, but I'm sure Dan can tell me how many of the teams in the 70s and 80s had these last day moments.
Not many. 82, I remember they had to beat Tottenham. 86, Dalglish at Chelsea. But
89, you had to beat Arsenal.
Yeah, touche. We'll have to give Guy that one after my little Michael Owen crack just before. Yeah, I mean, Matt said in an ideal world it would be an Aguero 90 plus 6 moments. I'd agree if it hadn't been for the fact that certainly even just in the last 10 years we've had to suffer the Demba Ba moments, and then of course last season's ultimately, I don't want to say futile, because I don't think you get this season without last season. I don't think you get what we're seeing in front of us now.
You don't get Madrid without Kiev.
I was going to say, how big a point is that this Jurgen Klopp side, in many ways, has been built off failure, losing the Europa League final, coming back the next year, reach the Champions League, get to the final, lose it, win it obviously lose the Premier League on the final day of last season, and now we're seeing this.
Well, it can be a hackneyed old cliche, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But I think Liverpool's modern history is absolutely proof of that. And you could even take that back to Klopp's first season when he got to 2 cup finals, lost the League Cup to Man City, and then had this fantastic run to Basel, great first half against Sevilla, and then it all went wrong in the second half, and there was no European football, 26-17. Klopp, if you look at Klopp's managerial history, he does have kind of some precedent for this as well. His first job at Mainz, I think, before he got them promoted into the Bundesliga, he had 2 last day narrow misses for promotion there. So I think that's maybe kind of forged his kind of character and his mentality, certainly in terms of his football management. But you get the impression in his life as well that you're not always gonna get things go your way, but that's life. If you go about things the right way, and you believe in what you're doing is right, and you can look at yourself at the end of the day in the mirror and know that you've done everything, then your rewards will come your way, even if you have to be patient for it. And we're now starting to see the evidence of this, and it's turning into one of those seasons that I think Liverpool supporters don't ever want to end.
And he's built this team. It's not just him that's had a point to prove. Like we all know, before they won the Champions League, he's lost all these finals, and it's how does he get that monkey off his back? This Liverpool team have had to prove points the whole way through, and it's different varieties as well. Right from Joe Gomez suffering 2 horrendous injuries, having to come back each time, be stronger. Virgil van Dijk, he's just playing in Scotland, he's not all that, and having to be a bit of a late bloomer. Andy Robertson, you're too small, having to go up at like Hull City, work his way up. Gino Wijnaldum's been relegated. James Milner's had to wait so long to get his opportunity in central midfield. Jordan Henderson nearly went to Fulham in a swap deal for Clint Dempsey. Salah got binned by Chelsea. Mane had to do it the hard way. Firmino was basically discarded by Brazil, had to go to Germany. That's just off the top of my head. You can go through that entire squad and they've all got these stories of how they've had to overcome adversity. And when Klopp's done it as well, and he's got them all together, they can say, right, we've lost a couple of finals, but we want that success. Now they've got it, they're not going to let it go.
What a point. Fantastic mood to end this episode of the Blood Red podcast. Of course, there'll be plenty more offering on the Blood Red channel, and of course, plenty more from these guys across on the Liverpool Echo website. Do keep attuned to all of that, and wherever you listen to your audio on demand, if you feel like leaving us a rating and review, that's always much appreciated, and any comments on YouTube in the comments section. But until next time, thanks a lot for your time and your company on Blood Red. It's bye for now.